Okay. Um, all right, a couple things tonight. Uh, we've gotten, of course, it's been great that we were able to actually increase. It sounds different to me for some reason. Maybe it's my own ears here. I've been having a little bit of problem with my ears, so. Echoey, is that what it is? Okay. Not sure why, but back a little bit. Back, way back, way back, way back. Okay. You guys hear me over here? Probably real good. Huh? Yeah. Okay. I don't know what's wrong there. Okay. So at least some of the missionaries have been responding now to, we always get, first of all, a thank you from the Surprises about this time. And they've always got to have some kind of cute things. They have little practical things. Of course, their little joke here they thought was funny. I replaced my rooster with a duck. Now I wake up at the quack of dawn. Oh, okay. Things like that. But they put those little funnies in there too in theirs. But Surprises, thankful for support. And then we got one from the Zemkes this week also. What a blessed surprise to receive a nice increase in support from you. We trust God to greatly bless you for your generosity, and we thank you for your for it. Gratefully, Dean and Sue, so Zemke. And a week ago, got an email, because Scott was also realized that we'd increased, and so we got a thank you also from them. They said, I just spoke to Pastor Olson, and he informed me that you recently increased our support by $50 a month. Victoria and I are overwhelmed with your generosity to us. This will go a long way towards meeting the gap in our support. I recently returned from a teaching trip to Chad that went very well. It reminded me why this ministry is so strategic. We train men who will pastor God's people in very hard places. Their governments are corrupt, producing poor living conditions and abysmal economies. They serve the Lord without much financial support from their people because everyone is poor, and sickness and funerals are commonplace. Everything is hard in these places. It's a privilege to provide them with good training so they can serve the Lord faithfully and expound His word accurately. Thanks for thinking of us and our financial need and being part of the solution. May the Lord continue to bless your ministry for the sake of His name, Scott. So, yeah. And another thing we got from a pastor, Pastor Philip Van Dop. He's a pastor of the Congregational Church over in Sheridan, and been very much involved in the Stand Up Montcalm. And so they showed to those who showed up last month the documentary made off of Eric Metaxas' book on Letter to the American Church. And so they actually have it lined up and they want to show it to more people. So they're going to show it at the Crystal Theater this Thursday night, 7 o'clock, no cost, but they could use the theater there. So I know Paul and I are going over, maybe Judy too. Anybody else wants to go over there, but that's going to be Thursday night, 7 o'clock at Crystal. So we'll probably be leaving here around 6 or probably to get there, probably. Yeah. All right. So just some announcements. And all right, glad some visitors here tonight. So, and all right, let's open it with prayer. And Tom, how about opening a prayer and praying for the offering?
Dear Lord, we thank you for this time that we can spend together in your word, study Genesis. We thank you for the pastor who brings this message to us. And we thank you for this beautiful day that you have given to us. Be with us, watch over us, give us safety on our ways. All these things we pray in your blessed name alone. Amen.
Amen. Here is Luke. Want to come help? There. Yeah, I want to help with that. Good, take that. We got the mic situation so I can sort of creep up on you a little bit here. Okay. We're going to be in Genesis 11:27, and we're going to actually go from Genesis 11:27 through 12:9. We'll probably be jumping around a little bit tonight. Some key things here. We've already introduced the idea of covenant, so we'll talk about what kind of blessings God was going to bring on Abraham tonight. And we'll lay the background a little bit here that heads us towards Abram and his background, okay? So in Genesis 11:27, now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarah was barren. She had no children, no child. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth together from Ur the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. I'll just read that for now and just lay some background here as we're heading into, again, God's call on Abram. Just some interesting things here. It tells us that in a passage that we know that Terah was 70 years old back in verse 26. We didn't read that, but he was 70 years old when he fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. He had his first child at that time, okay? They weren't like they were triplets or anything like that, okay? And this will be important just to understand this, because Abraham's mentioned first, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's firstborn. And if you make him firstborn, you're going to have a problem with the chronology, okay? Because, and you see also that Haran was the father of Lot. You're going to see the connections here. In that time, a lot of the marriages and stuff, a lot of them were all within their own clan and brothers and all this. Okay, that was the way it was at first. And so Abraham was listed first probably because of his prominence. In 12:4 we see, so Abram went as the Lord had told him, in 12:4 I should say this, so Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran, so you got to keep that in mind. And then it told us that Abraham, the reason I brought this up about chronology is because it says Abraham didn't leave until his father died, and his father died when? Verse 32, when Terah was 205 years old. Okay, so if Abram would have been born first, that's an impossible kind of a situation, okay, for Abram to be 75, okay? So you take 205 and you subtract 75, you come back a different number than 70, right? That's why, and the best way to explain that is that just Abram is probably put first just because of the promise he's going to have, okay? In verse 29, we see that Haran also had two daughters, not only Lot, but he had two daughters, Milcah and Iscah. All right, so you got Haran, one of the brothers of Abram. He has a son, Lot, and then these two daughters, Milcah and Iscah. Okay? Now we know later in Genesis that Milcah had 8 sons, and she was married to her uncle. You keep this straight in your heads, okay? Who was her uncle? Her uncle is Haran, right? Yeah. No, wait a minute here, let me think this through. Yeah, Haran, yeah. Nahor, okay. Nahor. Okay, yeah, right. So, yeah. So Haran died, and, yeah, keep these all straight. And Nahor, the uncle, is who she married. Okay? I'm just trying to give you some of this information up front. We know from Genesis 22:20 through 24 that Milcah had the 8 sons by Nahor, and Nahor's concubine Reumah bore 4 sons. And one of the big backdrops here is we're going to see that these other ones having kids, but the one thing that's going to stick out is that Sarai is barren. She doesn't have children. So this is going to be a big drop, because this is going to be a big part of the story of Abram, okay? Because all the promises we're going to see is tied to an heir. And now, now we need to figure out how old. It tells us, it will tell us in the past when we come to 12, that when Abraham goes, already at this time, how old is Abram when he goes and he doesn't have an heir yet? How old is he? He's 75. How old does that make Sarai? Remember well, let's turn to 1717. This will help us with that, okay? 1717. Would someone like to read that? 1717. Yeah, Katie?
Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?
Okay, so how does that help us? How old then was Sarai, if we know that Abraham was 75 when the promise comes and he takes off?
The way the Hebrews construct things, they might not have been exactly those ages we can tell about. So he might have been 101, and she might have been 92.
Well,
They would still say 190.
yeah, but basically the difference though is what? 10 years, so about 65. I mean, we figure out when came to him when she was probably 90. She probably had the child when 91 or something like that, could have been. But again, 10 years, so 65. So already, so when God makes this promise, realize this, that when you're 65 and you're barren, and now you're being told, again, you'll see how this becomes so significant in the whole test of faith, and everything depends on an heir and all the promises God's making to Abram. Okay, we just get this up front. So this is going to be a stress. In fact, this idea of barrenness, it's interesting how the concept stays with the wives of the patriarchs and the line with Abram. Now, Abram had Isaac. Look at Genesis 25:21. Genesis 25:21. Yeah, 21. Okay, would someone like to read that? Paul?
And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived.
Okay, so it's not going to say that much about the barrenness, but I just want you to see that this is a pattern of them, that they have to pray to God usually because there seems to be a situation where the wives of the line are not, it's not coming easy. It's like God hasn't blessed them yet with children. Look at Genesis 30, verse 1. So after Isaac, then Jacob, right? And Jacob's favorite, now he had several wives, but his favorite wife was who? Rachel, right? And notice what it says here again. It says, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Okay? And then look down to verses 22 through 24. It says, then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. Okay. And do you notice too how important this was for a woman to have a child? Remember even later with Hannah, I think it is, yeah. Yeah, right? So again, we're seeing this right away. And it's going to underline this whole fact that it's going to take like God and he's going to have to be the one that brings this whole thing about. The promises that he's making to Abram, again, you're just having this underscored. It's like, this will not happen unless God does it. Okay? And it's going to take even his miraculous hand to bring life into Sarah later here she's going to have a child like in 1717 when she's 90 years old, okay? And you know how she laughs about that because that's incredulous. And we've always said that about you ladies. You'd think it was incredulous too, even probably if you were 50 or 60, but 90? Yeah, right. So it's an incredible thing. And so it's just setting this all up. And it's going to put this, again, real test to Abram along the way. Okay? Again, this whole concept of endogamy, I want to say endogamy, which is a marriage within a family group. That's what that means. And this was common. Now, another thing is, was Sarah Abraham's wife or sister? Yes, half-sister, right? Same, again, so Terah is the father of both Sarai and Abram, only by different mothers. Okay? You see all the connections here, okay? They wonder how Adam and Eve and how the kids came and all those kind of things, all those kind of questions back when we were up, it's like, at first it wasn't a problem that close to the fall for that kind of problem to be there, for God to later to say that, not to be so close because of the potential of the fallen condition and the diseases and everything multiplying with them, so on, carrying that in. So, now Milcah, we said married her uncle Nahor, the brother of her father, Haran. Milcah was Lot's sister, right? Keep these all straight. Milcah's granddaughter is Rebekah, okay, who marries Isaac. Okay, so it's just start showing these connections, okay? Milcah's grandson is Laban, who is Rebekah's brother, and whose daughters, Laban's daughters, are Leah and Rachel that marry Jacob. Okay, got that? Got the family tree all set now in your heads? Got it all down? Okay. All right. I'm just sort of laying this as background. So, and when we read in the last part there, the last two verses of Genesis 11, it tells us how Terah, it says, and when it says they took Abram, it seems like Abram is still somewhat under Terah. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son's Abraham's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. Okay, now just get this, okay? It seems like there's an indication that Terah, and he's taken, and I don't know if Terah had the idea, but they were headed towards Canaan, but when they get to Haran, they end up stopping and settling there, and then it gives us the report that Terah dies, and it takes Terah's death for Abram to go on into as God has called him to do. All right. So when Terah dies, so what goes on is Abram, his wife, and then his nephew Lot. Okay? And it's going to start centering in these people. There's another question that starts to arise when you study all the connecting passages. Okay? Let's talk about this. When you read this, you think, where did God call Abram to go to Canaan at? Where was he at, in other words? All right, now let me just let you think about that a minute. His original place is Ur. Haran is 500 miles to the northwest. And then from there, they go into, it's a long swing. You go swinging around over into Canaan, okay? But they didn't get there at first, did they? Right. So this is the question, did Abram have a call to go before? Is this the second call? Is this the formal call? Now, why do I say that? Turn to Acts 7, when we pick up with Stephen. Now, what does Stephen say here? Notice, again, Stephen gets his chance to speak. Verse 1, it says, and the high priest said, are these things so? And Stephen said, now he starts to defend himself, brothers and fathers, hear me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran, and said to him, go out from your land and from your kindred, and go into the land that I will show you. Then he went out from the land of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran. And after his father died, God removed him from there into the land in which you are now living. Yet he gave him no inheritance in it, nor even a foot's length, but promised to give it to him as a possession, and to his offspring after him, though he had no child. And God spoke to this effect, that his offspring would be sojourners in a land belonging to others who would enslave them and afflict them 400 years. Now stop there. But just to pick up now, so where was the call? Where did it first come? See, this is a question that you read the text, you start putting them together. Look at Genesis, let's go back now. Let's go back to Genesis 15:7. Genesis 15:7. And here it says, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. Okay. One more, Nehemiah 9:7. Nehemiah 9:7. Nehemiah, Ezra, Nehemiah. Okay. 9:7. Would someone like to read that? Or I can just go ahead. It says, you are the Lord, the God who chose Abram and brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans and gave him the name Abraham. Now, the basic understanding is that Abraham was already called in some way out of Ur. Okay? They just got to put these together.
It doesn't say he was called, it said the Lord moved him. So we could be talking about God's providence, too,
It could be.
being his father.
It could be. Possible solution. Yeah? Judy?
So there are two, is it correct to say that there are two Aarons talked about in Genesis 1?
A brother?
Aaron, Abraham's brother who died. Aaron, the town that they went to.
Okay.
So is there any significance that the brother who's named Aaron is removed to the city of Aaron?
They moved from the city of Haran?
From
Ur.
Ur to the city of Aaron.
Yeah, they moved out to there. I don't know what the significance necessarily is, but yeah, Paul?
I thought about that. Haran could have been born in Haran. I mean, we don't know the
Right.
order exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Could have been they got there and then he named him after the place.
Okay. Yeah. Possible. But Haran is like 500. This land is 500 miles northwest of Ur of the Chaldeans, the place itself. The trade route. Yeah. They were going around like this from Mesopotamia area, the area of Mesopotamia, the area. Okay, general area. All right. What all I'm just trying to say is we have to put these together in the right way and understand. And sometimes we assume like in Genesis 12, and it could be that Genesis 12 is the official. When it says, now we go to Genesis 12, when we read it, then the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. Okay. But it does it tell us exactly where he is when he gets that call? Again, chronology, it's interesting in Genesis, it's sometimes topically and it's not necessarily always chronological. It's just the point, okay? Anyway, then you know this. So, just some background to all that. Now, I got some people thinking, I know, okay. Now, because one of the things we realize is that we gotta come to a position where we see Abraham truly obeying God in the call. Okay. Yeah, Paul?
The way this is written out, when you get to chapter 12, it starts to tell the story.
Mhm.
And I think that would be a natural place to fall, even if it happened when Jesus was born. Mesopotamia. Acts, in Acts, how he came from a lower position or something like that. I would kind of believe that.
Yeah, right,
He was in Mesopotamia.
yeah,
But the way they tell the story, they're gonna tell it all at once.
sure, right. And that happens a lot in Genesis, so we've been working through it, okay? Even, you take the table, we remember, 10 and 11, it's like, actually, probably 10 comes after, it goes like, you know, the chapters are a little bit backwards, okay? We have the expansion from Genesis 1, 2, more explanation of, and so on, right? Okay. Now, I just sort of bring all those different things in, because you'll realize this as we go through the rest of Genesis. You're going to see that the big thing is God's call on Abram and the Hebrews to become the people, and his whole purpose, as we'll go through what is promised, is, after, you have the flood, and you have people, they don't obey at the Tower of Babel, and now God's going to work through a certain people. But his purpose is not just for that people. His purpose in the long run is to bring an answer to the whole world again through this people, right? And a Savior, the Messiah, will come from this people as well, the ultimate answer, right? That's what's taking place here. So now let's look at some of the okay, before we do that even. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house." Okay, so that's a big deal. Okay, and for us to get a hold of that, we think about today in our terms, we move around a little bit more. Maybe we're not quite as tight in America. We have family because they're involved with ministry. They're different places. Sometimes we think that, those kind of things. But, and culture, and I know over where Michael and Nancy are in Guinea, that for any of them to leave their family in the Muslim faith, it's a shame kind of a thing. They're tied to their families very much in that sense, okay? And when you look at these things, like there's the nation, okay, the country, it's like, and then we keep moving into the kindred, all the relatives, out a little bit, and then the immediate tribe, and the immediate family, okay? And so God is asking him to just turn and go where I want you to go, and just leave all that behind. Okay? Just leave that behind, because I want to use you. Just leave everyone. Okay, so it's a big thing. This is where this comes in, okay? And so I brought up again missions is because, or some of these areas, when you say, I'm willing to follow Lord wherever he would lead me, do we really believe that? Are we willing to do that? Now let's consider.
Especially if he doesn't tell us where it is.
Yes. I just want you. Now, isn't that really true when you come to him? And if you say, I commit to doing whatever you want me to do, Lord. And if you'd call me wherever, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to go. Even if it means uprooting myself, leaving my job, my security. This is actually what people in ministry often do, yeah. Yeah. True. Yeah, true, yeah, that's right, yeah. So again, but what it comes back to always is this: I'm willing to be what God wants me to be, whether he moves me someplace or he leaves me right here to make that impact and be the different person, right? It's that I'm his now. Now, just let's look at a couple passages in this regard. relate it to us. Turn to Matthew 10:34. Matthew 10:34. Let's look at the way Jesus talked to the people. Matthew 10:34. Would someone like to read 34 through 37 first? Yeah, Derek?
Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother. And a person's enemies will be those of his own house. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me.
All right, how did that hit the Jews? Can you imagine Jesus saying that to the people? You have to love me and follow me and be more loyal to me than to your family and your parents, or love your parents. I'm number one. You got to come to that conclusion. You got to do that. Even if it brings such tension, it brings this conflict. All right? Was there conflict among the Jews about who Jesus was? Definitely. So you see, Jesus is bringing this, and he knows what it's going to do. And he knows the unbelief that will be there. And he knows all that's going to take place. He's going to end up being crucified because he's not going to be so well accepted either, okay? Let's think this through, okay? So he's making this big call on them. Look at the parallel passage. We'll come back to this. So you can keep your finger here. Look at Luke 14:26. Luke 14:26 and 27. Okay. So someone like to read 25 through 27. We'll set the context. Tom? Okay. Now, does this sound a little bit different, this approach to appealing to people to come to Christ, a little bit different than what we hear today? Think about it. What I said this morning, think about it. Jesus had people following him for a lot of wrong reasons, right? And so even in this context, go on further. What does he say to do? Think about what, do you really know who I am? Do you really know what you're committing to? What I'm calling, what my call, what kind of commitment that is? So he goes on, and would someone like to read the rest of that to verse 33, 26 or 33? Want to read that? Okay. 20. Where Tom left off through 33, 28. Wow. Now you see, he's saying you got to really think this through, and he uses the two examples. I'm going to build this big project, don't really have the means to do it. It's going to end up being a monument to my failure. All right? Are you committed really to follow me or not? Okay? The other one, situation of war, thinking it through again. The the disaster it could be if you don't think this through right. I want you to think through. And we talk about truth this morning. We talk about using our minds. There's content here. Who is Jesus? What is his claims on us? What is he demanding? What does he want on our lives? And when you start to look at what Jesus did in these situations and what he proclaimed, it's a lot different than the Christianity that a lot of us are familiar with today. A lot different, okay? So when God comes and calls, in fact, he even says, you make sure you understand what you're committing yourself to. And it's not like Jesus is worried, well, I might, lose somebody. All right? Because it matters that they recognize who he is. That he has the right to make that command on them, or even for that commitment. But they better be sure what they're doing. Okay? If we go back to that passage in Matthew 10:38, it basically says the same thing about taking up our cross. Okay? And that cross, again, it doesn't mean bearing some kind of trial necessarily like that. What did the cross mean in their culture? It could mean death because, right, the crucifixion. Okay? So, again, what God is calling Abram to, what God calls us to, is not superficial faith. Okay? Not superficial commitment. And that's why we could even spend time with the parable of soils and the different things there. People responding quickly, but then nothing being there because they really didn't understand, and they made an emotional decision, and as soon as things either got hard, they left, or because they saw the pleasures, they left, because they weren't really committed to Jesus Christ. There wasn't really a change in them. They weren't really good soil. They really weren't changed. They weren't really fruitful. And so you get this other side here and so we think about this. These are big things. When God comes to us and says, how far are you willing to go? I've seen these memes lately on, I think it was Facebook. Someone put up, I'm not sure one of my relatives or whatever, but it was like this. It says, you wonder if you're going to be willing to stand for Christ, but you can't even trouble yourself enough to get to church on Sunday morning. Or something like that. Just making the point, about really where is our commitment today? Where is our loves? All right? How far are we willing to go for God? Right? And so this is a big thing. When God asks Abram, leave your country, that's the way it is. You leave, cut ties for right now. Now what's interesting is, Abram will not, and his descendants will not always be totally separated from his family. And sometimes God will ask us, are we willing to give up things? And he just wants to see if we're willing to or not. And sometimes even when we show we're willing and we're afraid, what does that mean? Can I trust God that if I give my life into his hands, he's really going to take it and do something with me that I really wouldn't like? And, sometimes he puts us in a position that's difficult and hard and so on because that's the best and that's his plan. But often he just is testing us to see if we're going to believe him and trust him. And Abram did. As a result of that, again, God had promised then that he was going to do some special things through Abraham. Okay, so we go back to 12, and then we see, okay, what are the special things that he said he would do for Abram? In verse 2, the first thing he says, he will make him a what? Of him a what? A great nation. Now, if you're going to be a great nation, what do you have to have again? You have to have kids, right? Okay, so you're going to see how this is a real need. What's a nation, by the way? Usually, what's a nation? people with common what? Common language, maybe, cultures, law. Okay. Yeah, land. Yeah, a land, their own, right? That's why we struggle so much today with the the borders being open. How can you be a nation if, you just, there's no, we're not committed to what we were, all those kind of things, okay? It's breaking down. There's a purpose for that. It is breaking down the people in the nation. That's the purpose of all that, okay? But, so first of all, he promises to make him a nation, right? Make of him a great nation, not only. And later he'll talk about that, about how great a nation. In fact, later he's going to talk about, on what kind of terms does he use to tell them? Remember what he tells them, like in Genesis 15, about what sizes, how many people will end up coming from Abram and Sarai? Look at the stars. You can count the stars. And I'm not sure why I'm dying out once in a while, but I can tell it when I do. Then, yeah, the stars, or is the sand, right? The sand on the seashore. Yeah. How many people go around counting the sand on the seashore? Just, again, the hyperbole is used, okay? And so you put that in his mind. God says to, what do you think Abram and Sarai's discussions were after they got done hearing that Abram's 75 and she's 65 and we're going to have a nation? Okay. Got a long ways to go, right? All right. But that's what's going to happen. The next promise, and I will bless you. Was Abraham blessed? Well, will he be blessed? All right. How do we know that he was blessed, even from what we know? The three major religions of the world all claim him, don't they? Even though, there's false, right? You got Judaism, Christianity, and even the Muslims want to claim him, right? But what about his wealth? What is he going to run into? His problem with Lot, because he's got so much. He's got servants, what was it, 300 to 400 or something like that? He's got servants, right? He goes to these places and he gets tremendous. He has tremendous wealth. Tremendous wealth. He will be blessed. He will definitely be blessed. God promises to bless him. And he says, I'll make your name great. And that just goes along with what I said. That's how he's renowned. And he's known as the father of, basically, not only Israel, but the father of all those who have believed God. Right? In Galatians, it tells us that. So these are the promises to him. And then these promises come so that what? So that you will be a blessing. All right? I'm going to use you to be a blessing then to others as well. You will be. Now verse 3, I will bless those then who bless you, and I will curse those who dishonor you. All right? Now, this is an important principle a lot of people pick up on at this point. And it's a basis to a lot of the thought today about if, there's a lot of reasons for our country to be judged, and one of the reasons maybe God has held off some severe judgment is maybe all the missionaries sent out, but I think also because we have supported Israel that we have had God's hand of blessing. There's a principle that starts to take place here. Those who treat God's people properly, God's going to bless them. And those who don't, God's going to curse them, okay? And that's picked up from this principle here, okay? And he also says, though, through Israel, through Abram, and then through Israel, and on, all the families of the earth are going to end up being blessed. Now, think about that as well. What is the ultimate one again? Why did we be blessed? Through Christ, right? That's the ultimate one, spiritually, right? Yeah. So, so did Abraham obey. He did, didn't he? So verse 4, so Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram, again here, was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Morah. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. Now, these people that were with him, you think that if God had come to Abram, you think it was a vital faith yet that he even had communicated some of his faith to those who were with his, or it was just, they were just his knowledge of Yahweh, that he had in any way with the people that he takes with him from Haran to Canaan, that any of them there or on the way are people who become believers as well. Just you think that through. Maybe not at all. Maybe they're just hired hands. How does he show? Now we'll go on. How does he show his faith though? Let's go on more here. Abraham passed through the land to the place at Shechem. This place, right? In verse 7 then, when he gets there, it says, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. So how does he respond again to the Lord coming to him? He comes, he obeys, he goes there, and then the Lord meets with him, and he's going to bless him with land. I'm going to bless you with this land. And again, what does he do? He what? Yeah, he builds an altar to the Lord, right? He builds an altar to the Lord. He worships the Lord, right? And then you read shortly again, briefly. So, from there he moved to the hill country to the east of Bethel. Now I should just say Shechem is, I think it's 15 miles west of the Jordan, and I think it's either 30 miles or so northwest of Jerusalem. Gives you a perspective about where Shechem was, okay? That's where he first went. And he builds an altar there. Then he moves on, and he pitches his tent between Bethel and Ai. All right? And again, what does he do as soon as he stops there? Same thing. He builds another altar to worship Yahweh, okay? So again, you see him, his devotion to the Lord along the way, and the way he shows his devotion to the people in this form of worship, okay? He builds an altar to Yahweh. And then it just tells us that Abram journeyed on, still going towards the Negev. All right? What, again, as far as application, first one tonight was, again, we stress so much that when God calls us to something, and what it means to be a disciple, to be a believer, we need to be willing to do whatever God calls us to be. Now, I know there's a great need of missionaries, and I know that Michael Carlisle keeps talking about this. We need to be praying. In fact, Jesus said we need to pray to the Lord of the harvest that he'll send forth more laborers, okay? But there's a great need, okay? There's always a great need for people to be faithful and take God's call. But just in generally speaking, again, for us to understand, when God calls on us and when God calls us to himself, we belong to him now, and we're his. And we represent him in whatever he would want us to do, where we're at. Now, some of the basic things that are the most important, we would say, in our lives, that come back again to our faith, our family, right? Our freedoms, those kind of things in America. And we just need to be faithful to God in those areas, especially, okay? And then always be willing and open to whatever else he would call us to do. All those who truly trust God will be willing to forsake all to follow him. And now, having said that, what we're going to see with Abraham is we're still going to see growing faith. So when you first come to the Lord, your understanding of what saying, I'll do whatever you want for me, whatever you want me to do, Lord, you may not fully understand what that even means. But your heart, your devotion to the Lord is, I'm willing to do that, okay? But when God starts to point some things out about what you need to change or how you might need to live for him and all those kind of things, those things can start to be tests in which he's testing your faith, because you don't always understand. And so even when you come to faith, you understand enough to come to Christ in salvation, but you're probably not a theologian immediately. Right, Ben? Okay. You understand what's necessary, but you're not a theologian right away, and you keep learning that way as well. You start out, you keep learning truth. You start out, you make a commitment to God, and then God brings us along to help us understand and to be more willing and to be more faithful and to be more trusting, and that's what we're going to see with Abraham. Because Abraham, even though he makes this move and he's going to be blessed, we're going to see that he is going to be tested about this one thing over and over, and it's going to be the big issue. God, you promised me this. Where is the heir? I mean, if I get to be, I'm already 75. If I get to be 100, how can I have kids, right? If my wife, she's already 65. So we're going to see that struggle, and it become very practical. Any questions, comments? No comments from my wife, because she'll get me off going, no, right. What are you thinking, Judy? She's looking at me like, I've got some question.
I'm thinking 12:1.
12:1.
Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house. To verse 4. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him. And Lot, a family member,
Well,
went with him.
yeah. Lot went with him, yeah. But they still left the area where they were from. In reality, Lot had to be willing to do that. Lot is going to be an unusual person for us to look at, because we're going to see some of the worst kind of behavior in one hand, and yet then you have to harmonize that with the New Testament, where how he, as a righteous man, was so vexed with where he was living. So we'll look at that as well. But yeah, Lot did go with him. But they left everything. And I didn't know if there was an assumption there that Terah sort of knew, and they were planning on going to Canaan, and Terah sort of stopped the whole thing, and they got bogged down there, and then Terah had to die before Abraham was free to go on, or what. I'm not sure what that is either. That's something to think about, okay? Wow. Yes.
When we first start our walk, each one of us, we're willing to do anything, because we have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
As we go ahead, we learn more and more and more about the cost
Yes, we do.
all the time. I don't think that has an ending.
No, it
I'm still
doesn't.
finding out about the
Sure,
costs.
sure. And if God would tell you ahead of time what was for you coming down the line, would you like it if you just, okay, here's the plan for your life. You're willing to follow me? Happen to you? No. He grows us along the way to meet the next challenge, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. He does, which is great. Great. Some of you guys have gone through trials now that you would have never expected that you were going to go through. And you've seen God be faithful. Right? Well, let's close with prayer. I want pray for me. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to go try to get a couple, 3 hours of sleep. I'm supposed to get up and drive to Mount Pleasant about 12:30 or 1 in the morning to pick up my grandson and his wife and take them to the airport in Detroit to be there for a flight to Alaska for 2 weeks. So it's going to be I drive over there, down Detroit, back to the car, pick up my car back here. So it's going to be a long night. So just for safety. No deer, no deer, or anything like that. And anything else tonight you want me to pray for especially? I know we had a list there this morning, but anything else today? May God just help us to be faithful. Faithful. Yeah, Jeanette. just grateful for who you are, your word, the guidance. Thank you that you understand, Lord, truly, each of us, you made us. You understand our heart. You understand again, your people, what your plans are for us, how you take us through each step in our life. Help us to trust you and build our faith and help us please you. And again, we pray for Amanda and her husband as they take, Lord, on another child. And Lord, again, that you protect this little one. And Lord, again, that would be a blessing, Lord, in their family. And that you'll just continue to provide for their needs. Lord, again, help us this week to please you, to be the witness you want us to be used of you, to know the blessing